Okay, so today we're cleaning this carburetor, a Mikuni carburetor, off of old Yamaha Big Bear 250. In my experience, these carburetors are pretty easy to clean. Biggest thing is making sure you get the fuel out of the bowl, which I need a cup of some sort. Hey, Bob. There's a glass jar over on that blue table. Go get it for me. Dump whatever's in it just right there next to the table. Okay. So the biggest thing is make sure you drain the fuel out of the carburetor. Before you get to this point, once you're to this point, you'll want to take the bowl off like I'm going to here in a second. Which at this point you can go ahead and take the fuel overflow off. And then you'll want to make sure you have something like this to make sure that a glass jar or something to make sure that the fuel's clean. Rag. That worked.
What are you doing?
They say you'll get a rag. What does it look like I'm doing?
What did you do?
The light. But you'll get something like this. Mine I'll have to clean out because we let it sit for a little while. Got a little bit of varnish in the bottom. But you'll just want to, usually they're a flathead. Just undo the drain screw. Then let it drain. And after you let it sit for a while, you can look at it, and if there's water in it, you'll see water sitting in the bottom. If there's water in your fuel, you'll see water sitting in the bottom. Just looks a little light on color, or a little clear to be gas. And you have to take that, screw's usually right here above your overflow outlet. You'll just undo that, drain all the fuel out of the bowl. And then once you've drained that fuel, usually grab you a Phillips and just take the bowl off, loosen the screws before you take them completely off. But you can take the bowl off at this point. And then once you get it off, you'll want to make sure you clean everything out of the bowl. And then it should be good to go. You've also got to get something like a bread tie. If you don't have a Carb clean brush kit, which I don't. I also don't have any bread ties, so I have to find another way. Once you get that off, you can just tap the carb off. And that's really nasty looking in there. You don't want your fuel to have all that floating in it. Your bowl definitely should not have all that gunk and gelled up fuel in it. Your float moves everything. That's what it needs to do. You can take this off. I usually leave these out of the carburetor, but they do help if they're in there. So you've got your jet there, your main jet. You want to Well, you want to turn it in. If it's not all the way in, you want to turn it in. And then undo it. And just remember how many out it was, because you'll screw the jet all the way back in and then out however many turns it screwed in the first time. Which actually, that means jet's that good. But let's check the pilot jet. Which, for some reason, it won't start. This pilot jet does seem to be a little gunked up, but it's not as bad as it could be. So I can't really show the camera, but what you're going to want to do is you'll look through that hole in the center, and you should be able to see straight through it. And you should be able to blow air through it. Which that one you can, so that one's fine. This carburetor actually should not have any issues starting. Everything's good on it. Should be getting plenty of fuel. So what we'll do is we'll just put these jets right back in, especially if they're clean like this one. And then we'll clean that bowl out. And you don't want to, you just want to cinch these down. You don't want to tighten them to the point it's hard to turn. You just want to go until it's tight-ish. Just tight enough you can't turn it with 2 fingers. And once it's to that point, it's good, because that's as far in as it's supposed to go. And then now, you got your bowl and fuel. This fuel's absolutely nasty. You don't want your fuel looking like that. But now that we got this, we'll take something clean. Or I'm gonna use this and just gently, which you can use a flathead screwdriver, that works too. Just kind of scrape all this gunk out, because that sitting in the bottom of that bowl will eventually get sucked up into your carburetor, because this little divot here is where your main jet is going to pick up fuel from, is that very bottom piece. And then you'll just want to, some of it you can kind of tap out without having to scrape. And then hopefully, once you do something like this to any carburetor, you have no issues with it running. Biggest issue with this one is it wasn't getting fuel, which now makes sense because it was all gelled up in the carburetor. And like I said, I won't be putting this back on, but I would recommend using it just because it helps. Right there, it helps pick up a little bit more fuel. But that's a completely it's a personal preference. I will not be using them. I don't get a benefit from it. It doesn't really help a whole lot, other than just making sure it pulls fuel out of the bottom of the carburetor. So now we'll just put these screws back in to the bowl. You want to do it in a star pattern. So you do this one just till it's finger tight. then you do the one diagonally across from it. Make sure it's lined up with the edges before you start tightening in the screws. If you don't do that, you can damage the bowl and the gasket. Which this one has a steel gasket, so it's fine. Well, stainless gasket. And then you'll just do the last 2 screws, finger tight, and then you'll go back to the first screw, tighten it down, and you'll just do that same pattern until they're tight. Which most of them have crush washers on them. If it doesn't have crush washer, just kind of get it as tight as you can without stripping anything. And once you're here, which actually I forgot to do, so there's this little idler right here that you'll want to check. Make sure nothing's in that passage. It's a needle. And actually that passage is fine. What that is, this needle has a little something on the end of it. You'll just want to wipe that off and stick it right back in there. And then after you do that, you'll tighten the screw all the way back down. What?
What are you making a video for?
Something.
Okay.
And you'll just tighten that all the way back down.
That too creeps me out.
And then you're good. Of course, you've got your idle right here where you can adjust your idle. And then you'll have your needle that's over your throttle needle for the Mikuni. That'll be on the end of the throttle cable, which got there. Put the carburetor back on. Now that I'm back out here, you'll want to make sure that this is all cleaned, which I cleaned this before I took the carburetor inside. So now what we'll do, we'll put that back in there. And then some of them have alignment pins. Like this one has this piece here for the idler, or the idle control. So you'll want to run it down on that side, and then make sure the needle lines up with the jet. Because if the needle doesn't align with the jet, it won't work correctly. And then, out of luck there. For some reason, this does not want to go in like it is supposed to. There it goes. This little circular gasket. If I could get this to sit in there. There it goes. A good sure. Throttle in there. Screw it on the top of the carburetor. And then we'll leave it like that until you get the carburetor actually on there. Because you don't want it to be so tight that you can't get the carburetor on the motor. What?
Are you gonna be done with the video?
I don't know. How about you? Oh, stop for a minute.
Can you still watch me?
Yes, I can still watch you, bub.
Okay, I'm gonna come on.
How in the world? There it goes. That's in there. And then you have to make sure you get your clamp on here for the intake, which this one for some reason had a bunch of gunk in the bottom and like water in the bottom of it. I think somebody just didn't put the seal. Yeah, nobody put the seal back on the airbox lid. But I'm gonna get this on there and then be back. But first, one last thing is you want to hook up your breather, your fuel line, and then at the end you'll hook up your overflow. After you put these two bolts on, and then we'll get it running afterwards. Alrighty. Your carb bolts are here, one here and then one on the other side. You'll want to put both of them on. They're a 10mm bolt. Pretty simple to put on. Get those tightened up real quick. Now that you've got the carb mounts on there, you're good to go ahead and stick your breather on, which will be this top nipple by the Mikuni emblem, or the word Mikuni. This is going to be your fuel line. Stick your fuel line on there. Now it's on there. This one has a constant tension hose clamp. Most of them will have just a normal screw-on hose clamp anymore, especially like newer styles. Like this Polaris behind me, it has a just a screw-on style. Then you want to grab your overflow. Just get under here and find your overflow bar, which will be on this one on the other side. After you tighten the drain screw, you want to tighten this to make sure you ain't leaking fuel out of the bottom. This one's a bar, but a lot of them are just a rounded piece. Which the overflow, I'm not really gonna worry about much on this one. I'll just kind of get it there. It's older. Doesn't really get rode much anymore. Kind of just sits. Doesn't even have an air filter. Now it's on there. You'll want to get a pair of pliers, or of just something that you can tighten this down with. And then, now it's all in there, you can turn it on, turn your fuel on. And then make sure it's not leaking nowhere. Then actually let out your drain a little bit. Drain screw. Hold on a second. Wait, you want to do that usually. I can't get it to come out with the line there, but you'll want to undo it and just make sure you have fuel coming out of this line. As long as you got fuel coming out of the line, you got fuel making it into the carburetor. Which, I don't know if this one has a reserve or not. Pretty sure it's just... Okay, reserve, up is reserve. Oh, it only has one on anyways, because it doesn't have a reserve pickup in there, I forgot. Okay, so you've only got up, which is reserve. Or, well, it has a reserve pickup. It doesn't have a on pickup, which is the taller one in the tank. So you got that, and then now you're gonna want to get this intake boot on here. Then once you get the intake boot on, you want to tighten down the Phillips screw on these hose clamp on the Big Bear 250, or not Big Bear, Moto 4 250s. Or at least this one is a Phillips. It could be changed depending on how many owners or how old the machine you have is. I just want to tighten that down until it's a good seal, because you don't want any air leaks. And then you want to listen and make sure you can hear that slide working in the carburetor. So now, because this one has a bad battery, this battery is located back here on the inside of the left rear tire. I'm going to stick a charge on here and then allow it to charge for a minute and then attempt to start it, probably with some starting aid. I've now got it connected to a different four-wheeler, so I'm just gonna connect it to the 350 Rancher. Just blow some starting fluid at it, and then key on, and then I'll just I was wrong. I guess I did clean the idle screw out. Or idle, not screw. The idle. Huh? I started a four-wheeler. I did clean the idle jet out. No. But, will you stop for 5 seconds, please? Just chill out. Now that it's been cleaned, it ought to run no problem. Like I said, we don't ride this one much, but it runs. Now runs. What? No, not right now. It's too wet to be riding them around. But now, hopefully, when I undo this at the ground, it'll stay running. Okay. So we gotta get the stator. For those who don't know much about small engines, a lot of them have bad stators. Oh, a lot of the older ones have bad stators, but as long as it has a good stator, you can just hook power up to it, and just like this right here, you just need the battery with the same amount of cold cranking amp. I'll just start, no problem. Which with a good battery, it'll run a little bit. I want to run a little bit more. it is a little down on power. But that's because the transmission, I believe, is burnt up. Other than that, it rides really good. Other than it has no brakes and a bad battery.